the sound of the police in my hood.
And yo, what's going on? Welcome to the Three Black Heathen Show, as Imp always says, the greatest show on YouTube. I'm here, your host Nate Brody, with Christopher Maute and my man Drag Not Silvis. What's going on, Drag?
What's going on, folks?
So, Drag, you gotta tell us what's happening today. Who's our guest?
Well, if you don't know Mr. Maute, you probably not been around for a little while, but that's all right. We're gonna help you out with that. Mr. Maute is one of what we call the progenitors of this whole nonsense. One of the, when I say nonsense, this whole G plus community, any Google anything talking about people doing any kind of anything anywhere. All right, I just want to say anything because that's my word today. But Mr. Maute is known as Mr. Mr. Italian, Mr. Diplomatic, Mr. Dulcet Tones, Mr. I can cook anything and it's delicious. Man, he is the man, the myth, the mystery, the envy of many of us here, including my damn self. So if you have not had a chance to have a conversation with Mr. Maute, you have missed out on parts of this community that you will never, ever be able to find anywhere else. So that's enough dick sucking now, dick riding. So look, folks, if you have an idea of somebody that's difficult to talk to, anybody you think is just cantankerous, Mr. Maute can find a way to get to them. I'm just going to put it out there. I've seen it myself 1,000 times. Hell, it's where I get some of my inspiration from.
Darth Dawkins. Have you talked to Darth Dawkins? Because he's very difficult to talk to.
He's a Jersey boy. He understands that pork roll's appropriate name is Taylor ham. Yeah.
Yeah, because I don't know anybody that can talk to that guy. So if you could talk to Darth Dawkins, I got. Do you got that on video? Is that on video?
Oh well, there is. So my history with Darth Dawkins was my first interaction with him was behind like it wasn't really behind the scenes. It was just an off-air hangout of Holy Spackles. And then after that, that's when I found out that he was from Jersey and Taylor ham, the pork roll and all that stuff. And then I was on some other show, and I think it's part of the Bible Thumping Wingnut Network, if I'm allowed to say that. It was, and I think the guy's name is Jason, and he's a minister and he has his own show, and he was interviewing me. And at the end of it, it was Q&A, and he opened it up and he came in, but it wasn't Darth Dawkins. It was one of his other 3 or 4 names. And he presupped me, right? And that all happened. And then and then it clicked halfway through that this is the same guy from the previous thing. And then after we went off air, he turned into a completely different person. I was like, "You're that guy, Taylor ham, right?" And he's just like, "Oh my God, good memory, blah, blah, blah." And he was totally normal to me. And ever since then, he'll pop into hangouts that I'm in just to bust my chops. And he's very receptive to my busting of his chops in a way that I don't really see him comfortable with in general. He's a little less cantankerous with me.
It's interesting because I used to talk to him all the time, But he has this thing where, well, for me, I think he's on a mission. And like you're saying, off air, we talk about Star Wars, for instance. He's a huge Star Wars buff. He hates the Force Awakens because he always calls it the ripoff of A New Hope. He literally says that. But talking to him off, it is a total. Why do you think that is, though? Why do you think he's so different when the camera is when the live stream is off? He's a different person. But why do you think that is?
Well, it could be one of several things, but I mean, he could be savvy to the fact that when the camera is on, it's being recorded or being watched by more people than are in the virtual room that he's speaking to, right? Like currently there's the three of us, right? If I treated this like a conversation between the three of us, it's going to be pretty easygoing, pizza and beer kind of conversation. If I have an agenda and I know that you have a large audience, my behavior, the way that I speak might change. The way that if I'm an activist for an agenda, the way that I talk about certain things might change when the camera's on than when it's off. It might be a deliberate move in that sense. I'm not saying that it is. I'm saying that's one of many possibilities. It could be that he's a troll. It could be that he's a Poe. It could be that he's, there's a zillion reasons why someone's like that. But, I think the people that are the most interesting to talk to are the ones that seem very much the same on and off camera, because then you can have productive conversations. Because otherwise, if you talk to somebody whose shtick on camera is a script, then there's nowhere else to go except the script and trying to break the script, and then it's just like, oh, that takes the fun out of like productive conversation.
Well, trust me, I would say this G-Man is the same hyperbolic, crazed maniac offline as he is online. Drag met him. Remember that drag?
Unfortunately, I have.
But it's true though. It's a little more interesting, and it's funny because I've always that switch, when they do make that switch from on to off, it's almost a little jarring because, like, even in the case of Darth Dawkins, he seems so normal. Like, he makes regular jokes. He looks like it just sounds like a guy that you'd have a beer with and talk just bullshit with. But when he gets into that Presup mode, it is a different thing. But what is your position on the God question? Because all of us really don't believe. But how do you consider the God question?
I think the phrase that I was using the last time I was like in the mix is on a good day I'm an apatheist, right? Like I'm apathetic to the question of whether there is a God or not. And on a bad day, kind of tongue-in-cheek, a bad day, when I have to make a decision about it, I do consider myself an atheist, and so I'll put it that way.
So how do you feel about religion in general? Do you think it's good or bad, or do you think it has its place? Like, what overall, what do you think about religion?
My approach to religion, the older I get, becomes more and more, I don't know how else to describe it, but anthropological. And because of that, I think that it has value. And I think that it is important, and I think that it is inevitable, right? My favorite example to use is way back. There was a South Park episode where the world was devoid of religion. Everybody was atheist, right? And they worshipped Richard Dawkins.
I remember that.
But there were two opposing factions of their interpretation of Richard Dawkins, which I think exposed just an awesome blind spot that we have. It's just like anything that we value to the point where it's sacred becomes our God, and any community that surrounds around it is going to become ritualized. That's religion, right? Even if it's not the myths that we're used to, the Thor and the Egyptian and the Norse gods and all that stuff. We have current religions, and I think we're going to have future religions. And even if we don't recognize them as religions like Roman Catholicism or anything, I think that it's always going to exist. I think it's a manifestation of how the human brain works.
Yeah, it's fair enough. That is fair enough, because I too think, for me, religion is a tool, and I think these conversations that we had online to kind of open my eyes to see it's not just this evil thing that crops up out of the hearts of evil men and women around the world. It is a way for us to try and understand this complicated thing we call life. But as far as you personally, you were married to the beautiful, formerly Shanna Rocky, which is now Shanna Maute.
That's right. You got it right.
And yes, I had to make sure I had that correction. So
get that shit, tighten that up.
So like yourself, my wife is not an atheist. And so for us, I respect her views and I open myself up to hearing her point of view. But I would imagine your household is probably a bit more contentious than mine as far as that goes.
As far as religion goes, is that what you mean? Like talking
Yeah,
about
yeah.
religion, philosophy
Sure.
talk, and stuff like that?
Correct.
I think that that's interesting. I think that Shannon and I have come to a truce when it comes to arguments having to do with religion specifically.
Is it an unholy alliance? Like me and my wife have like an unholy alliance where it shall not be mentioned. If it is, all hell breaks loose.
No, it's nothing like that. It's nothing like that. It's more every once in a while it comes up, and she has her arguments, and I have my kind of arguments. Now, keep in mind that when I do take a position, right? Because being an apatheist, I can listen to people talk about their positions all day, and it doesn't bother me. I'm interested in why they think what they think, and that core question is really what Shannon and my conversations have been about. Like, what are the factors that lead somebody to believe? What is persuasion? Like, what is belief in general? How are decisions made? Are humans good at decision making? The answer is obviously no, but in what ways? So she and I have been, like listening to the same podcasts, and the conversations have been a lot less about religion and a lot more about like psychology and podcasts like The Hidden Brain, and research that shows how predictably irrational humans are and stuff like that. So our conversations really revolve around that, and those kind of turn into like aha moments of like, oh, I was listening to the podcast and they were talking about how we have a blind spot towards X, whatever the topic of the comment. And it was like, and just yesterday I was driving down the road and I found myself noticing I was going through X. And so it was like, it's those kinds of conversations. And then it branches off in rabbit holes about philosophy and how other humans work and stuff.
It's beautiful. That's beautiful. But you still have a truce like that. You can't skip the word truce.
Truce.
Absolutely. It is a truce. Like she doesn't deliberately try to break down my atheism, and I don't try to deliberately break down her deism, right? Or to gain leverage in that way. Because keep in mind, as an atheist, I don't think once again, when I take the position of atheist, I haven't been logicked into that. It just makes sense in an intuitive and reflexive way that I don't think has a strong philosophical underpinning. And I haven't really heard many, if any, arguments for atheism that hold muster philosophically.
You mean you didn't hear the gospel of evolution and you were converted?
Say that one more time.
You didn't hear the philosophy of evolution and you were converted? That's not what happened?
Well, I wouldn't put it in those terms.
Maybe the Big Bang convinced you. The
Big Bang convinced me. No, I just, I was raised Roman Catholic, and the line that I use is from George Carlin. I was raised Roman Catholic until I reached the age of reason. Right. That's the bumper sticker version, but it's just, going to college and being introduced to different ideas. I just gravitated away from religion and more towards philosophy and psychology. And the more of that literature that you read, it just changes you. It puts different filters in place for which you can perceive reality. And when you look at religion through those filters, it just changes. It's not like, oh, wow, this thing that I was raised to believe isn't just not true in general, right? If you're from a factual perspective, but it's repeated across all cultures. Why would humans do that? That becomes the next level, right? Instead of being pissed off that the religion I was raised with wasn't true and rebelling against it, being a militant atheist or what the fuck ever. I've mellowed with age. Keep in mind, I'm 47 right now. When I was in my 30s, I was a little bit more passionate about atheism, but I was also a lot more naive about philosophy. So it was a complete naive, uninformed position because I read like a Richard Dawkins book and thought I just knew everything because
So you didn't did you also do the other stereotypical thing? What is it? Watch Zeitgeist, I think the movie is.
I did watch Zeitgeist, but I've only seen that in the past like 6 years, 5 years.
What changed your mind on the whole question? Because you said you were Roman Catholic before. So what led you down the path that you're on now?
So the true answer is I don't know, but I will post hoc a narrative to at least make a story interesting. So I was raised Catholic. I was an altar boy. I went through the Sabbaths. That's right, baby. That's why you think I'm hot, fucking drag. I went through the Sabbaths up until confirmation. I was confirmed. For those of you that are Catholic, you'll know what I'm talking about. For those of you that don't, confirmation is like the Catholic rite of passage into adulthood, where you can receive the host and blah, blah, blah. You're an adult in the eyes of the church. And then when I was a senior in high school, I drifted away from it because my family moved, this, that, and the other. When I was a senior in high school, I decided to reapply myself to it. And I bought one of those 1-year Bibles that breaks like an Old Testament and a Psalm into 365 increments, so that you can just read a little bit each day. And I read that. And it was dense and boring. And the lessons that it taught me in my like 17-year-old testosterone infested haze was very difficult to conform to, right? Like the idea, and I remember pondering this specifically, the idea that committing adultery is not just a behavior, it's the thought of lust that is also a sin. The thought of lust is the only thought that I had between the ages of 15 and last week. So, I mean, like, but when I was pondering this as a senior in high school, after reading all this and trying to take it super seriously, it kind of made me a little neurotic. Now, that is not the reason why I gave up on religion. It's certainly not. But I do remember that experience, and I think it makes for a funny story on the narrative. Then I went to college, and I went to music school, and then I studied psychology. And I think that just along the way, the necessity of religion lost its value. My perception of it changed. I did become a more staunch atheist at first, right? The pendulum really swung the other way. And then over the past, 15 years, I've mellowed my position such that I'm less interested in arguing why you think what you think than understanding why you think what you think. To me, that's where the heat is, right? No matter how good your arguments are or how good you are at arguing, you don't win the religion argument by debating. That's just with words. That shit just doesn't work, right? You don't get somebody to understand that you're right by demanding and making assertions that they are wrong. You do it by understanding where they're coming from. And once again, I'm not trying to persuade them this way or the other. I just want to understand.
That's a really good point, because we do encounter lots of people here on this platform that think that they can somehow logic you or faith you into their position. And it comes down to what you're more inclined to do, honestly. There are some people who are, more moved by logic. There's some people who are more moved by testimony,
Well, there's some people that claim that they're more moved by logic, and that's the curse of atheism, in my personal opinion.
Yes.
I think that atheists think that, well, I'm an atheist, therefore I am more rational, therefore I'm more reasoned, therefore all of this horseshit. And I think that they're the guiltiest of that shit.
Well, that's a confirmation bias. You believe that you hold a rational position. It's interesting because most of the time when I am talking to atheists, one thing I always mention, I said, even though it's an argument ad populum, 97% of the planet disagree with our position. 97% of the people believe there's a God out there. And if that's true, if 97% of the public does believe, then it seems like our position is not only a minority position, it's a real, it's one of those things where if I got 97% of the people on the planet to say something has happened, I would believe that what they're telling me is true. I would believe that that event happened, or I believe that experience was somehow explains reality in some way. But in this one case, I don't, and I think even though I do believe atheism is the best, I don't want to say explanation. It describes what actually is going on in the best manner. I don't think that we can that we can have any what's it hold on rationality to say our position is rational, because I do think that there are arguments against it. I haven't found any good ones against it, but I think there are arguments against it.
Yeah, and those are fun, right? It's a fun dialogue to play. It's a game. It's a crossword puzzle, right? And either you're into it or you're not, or you recognize it as a game or you don't. But for people that are super too into it, you know, like and to Drag's point about, you know, like use the platform to try to logic people into their position. Writing off of that, I think that atheists are particularly bad at being like, well, I came to become an atheist through ration and logic. Like, that's the part that kills me, because it's such like or psychological literature shows that you eventually, you know, kind of evolved your position and post hoc and making up a story about why you have the current position that you have. Right. And you're painting yourself wonderfully by saying, oh, I just logic myself into this position. It's the most logical position. I'm rational now. I'm an atheist. I'm reasonable. Fuck that.
But that fails to realize that everybody thinks their position is the most, like a theist would say that, a Christian would say that.
Our
yes.
opinions. We have to be. We have to be compelled by our own fucking thoughts and opinions, beliefs.
The guy in the mental house also thinks, he's like, yeah, I'm Napoleon and I have the most rational position on the planet.
Exactly. Your confidence is not a certitude outside of your fucking brain.
So, you know, I always find that people come to YouTube because they want to either tell a story or present something to the public, or either show a side of themselves that they usually don't show. So what is your channel about? Like when you're doing your thing, like what do you do and what message are you trying to convey out there?
So I'm going to try to bumper sticker this, but I'll answer your question up front. Currently, I don't really make a lot of content. And when I do make content, I do it through my Goodenall Talks channel. So in case you can't tell, I try to maintain somewhat of an optimistic spin on things. And so I kind of made my own channel called the Goodenall Talks, because I pretend that it's a prescription drug. It's actually called Goodenall Talks Prescription Strength, because Goodenall is the medicine that you should take when you think you're about to come over with a case of the fuck-it-alls. Don't give in to the fuck-it-alls. Get prescription.
I see what you did there.
What's that?
I see what you did there.
See what we did there? So the Goodenall Talks is like me and Fabio and Andriozzi and a bunch of other Motley Crue members, not the band, just in general Motley Crue. Drag's been on it a bunch of times. And we just shoot the shit about weekly events. So there's that. And then my channel, Chris Maute, Maute Man, it has playlists of like me cooking. I love to cook, recipes that I have, cooking shows that I've done with Fabio, who lives in Italy, in real time, where like he's teaching me how to make a dish and we make it in real time. Then I teach him how to make a dish and we make it in real time. Music, I'm a musician. So there are videos of me shredding on 6-string bass. I used to host a show called Meeting of the Minds. And that was on the New Covenant Group's channel. And I'm not sure how familiar you are with New Covenant Group. I'm sure Drag knows knows a lot about them.
No, is it what's the name of the the pastor who runs it?
Dr. Michael Jones.
Yes. I saw Sly 10 get kicked off of his channel one time.
Yeah, that was a super popular clip.
Yeah.
And I have a good Dr. Michael Jones impersonation. Let's see if I can do it. He always likes to talk about how we can wrestle with these topics of atheism and theism. That's my impersonation. And just imagine I look like Kenny Rogers while I'm saying that. And that is Dr.
Yeah, that was a good impression. That was a good impression. Oh man,
over the dyslexic and proxylexic linguistic elements of what's going on here, and wrestle with these and just try to love each other with them. That's what we do here at the place.
So it seems like you just so it seems like you're really just about hanging out and just really seeing what other people think and how they see the world.
Wow, you're an astute listener. The core of what I do is to interact with other people, have fun, and to increase my quality of life, right? For me, using social media is just another extension of being social, and I'm a gregarious person. And I don't necessarily have a chance to go out and be social. I have a family. I'd rather stay home. And it takes a lot more effort for me to get ready to go out and to get back and all that happy horseshit than it does to like pop online for like 50-60 minutes. Then I can go right back to my family.
Yeah, yeah.
So being online is just like another way to learn about other people, to meet new people, and to have fun, interesting conversation about shit I'm interested in.
So you know what? I always like to ask atheists this. What's the best religious argument you've heard? Now it doesn't have to actually be convincing. It just has to be something that you struggled with a little bit until you figured out, okay, this is obviously bullshit. Are there any arguments that were, I don't want to say convincing, but that you struggled with understanding the application of it?
So I don't find philosophical arguments very compelling. So it's difficult to answer that question. And let me qualify that. Let me frame that. I think that using pure philosophical arguments, logic and rhetoric, as it applies to the God question, it's fruitless, because you could perpetually just navel gaze about it. And it's an example of where philosophy reaches the glass ceiling of psychology. And then you need empirical evidence in order to take those philosophical theoretical claims and determine whether they are a reality or merely theoretical. So the best answer I have to your question is I haven't experienced God. For people that have had religious experiences, I can't argue with that. I can't argue with that. You felt the presence of God. You saw God. You felt this. You perceived that. I totally believe that you perceived that. That doesn't mean that I'm agreeing that it happened, but it's compelling as fuck. And if everybody had a super consistent version of that story, that might start to build evidence in my mind, maybe. But even still, I just don't. It's because of the way that I think about it. Just arguments in general don't really knock me off my feet.
But isn't that the what do they call it? They call it the space alien example, where everybody who's been abducted by space aliens sees the bright light, sees the anal probes, that type of thing. Very consistent stories throughout, but no one believes those stories are true. It's that type of thing. Even though all the stories happen to be consistent with one another, no one believes that all these people were abducted by space aliens. And I'm kind of that's how I honestly feel about the religious arguments too. Like, everybody kind of has a story. No one believes they're all true, but you can't really discount them. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you can't discount them. I mean, again, because I'm not an anti-theist, if you're religious and you're a contributing member to society, you should be religious. I am not here to change your mind about it. I am not an atheist activist. I'm not trying to dissuade you out of what you're doing. So with that in mind, again, getting back to like the original point, like I see value in religion, and this was because you asked me if I had heard what was the most compelling argument that I had heard. And for me, the most compelling stories that have to do with religion and belief are the personal experiences, the subjective experience. But also keep in mind that when you start from there, a bunch of different kinds of questions manifest. Okay, you perceived it. What could account for you perceiving it? One option is it actually happened. One of it is some neurochemical process happened in the brain due to, okay, what causes neurochemical processes happening in the brain? Well, being in a crowd that are all on the same page with a lot of energy, a pseudo-hypnotic state, like all of a sudden you're into like hypnotic states, hypnagogic experiences, like and it becomes completely not a religion conversation.
Well, what about this? It's interesting. What is the most, because I've looked at your channel and I've seen that you do a lot of interviews. What's the most interesting interview that you can say that you had? And this is not to discount all the other interviews that you did, but just something that was interesting.
Well, the one that I'm most proud of currently is Dr. Paul Rozin. And Dr. Paul Rozin, so that's another thing on aside from doing Meeting of the Minds, I also randomly interview philosophers and scientists that I'm interested in. Dr. Paul Rozin cut his teeth in psychology studying disgust. So he is like the godfather of disgust research. He was the guy that did the experiments where If you gave somebody a shirt and said it was Hitler's shirt, would you wear it? What would you have to do to purify Hitler's shirt to make it less contaminated? How moral disgust um, branched off from disgust as a regular emotion, and how it's a little bit different, and the things that trigger purity. Like his research just touches everything. And if you're familiar with Dr. Jonathan Haidt, who is a very popular author right now, he wrote The Coddling of the American Mind. That's his most recent book. But he also wrote The Political Brain. He has a theory about benchmarks for morality. And he has The Happiness Myth, I think, is his other book. So Jonathan Haidt is a student of Paul Rosin's. So that interview was awesome because he also is a food connoisseur and his son is a composer. So we talked about like music, food, disgust, psychology, and science. It was like he had to kick me out of his friggin' office. It's great.
Yeah, he sounds like he hit all the high points for you. Shit.
What's that?
I said, it sounds like he hit all the high points for you.
Oh yeah, yeah. And he has like a thick accent. And I remember we were talking because he was also my thesis advisor for grad school. Let me rephrase that.
Wow.
He wasn't my thesis. That's incorrect. I gave myself too much credit. He, because I was using a scale, because I was manipulating and redeveloping and reworking a scale that he had come up with, I had asked his permission for it. Now he works on the UPenn. He works at UPenn, and I work right off the UPenn campus. So in corresponding with him, he's like, "Why don't you present your data as you get it during my lab meetings?" And so through that process, he helped me hone and gave me great ideas and stuff like that. So he's a great guy. This all to the one story of one of the reasons why I love him. Yeah, he hit all the high points. He also has this way of talking. He like talks like, yeah. So my joints hurt really bad, and I know that homeopathic medicine's not good for you, but I take a chondroitin and glucosamine because I figure it can't hurt. Like it's just he's that guy. And the whole time he's eating like a bagel that with crumbs all over his sweater as he's telling the story in the middle of a lap. Like he is just the coolest fucking dude. Oh,
yeah, sounds like it. It's always nice to meet people, who, men and women of letters who are pretty laid back. They can have a conversation with you. They don't have to put on airs. And that's one of the things that I appreciate, because when you see people of letters depicted in movies or popular media, they're always socially awkward, really stuffy or stuck up, and it does a disservice, really. I mean, to academia, I believe.
Well, not just academia in general, but science specifically. So I know that, Drag, you're interested in science communication to a certain extent. Is that correct?
That is correct.
All right. So the idea that like academic brainy people, like think of how they've been portrayed in media, and you wonder why there's a stigma on, scientists, right? What's one of the factors why science literacy is so poor in America? It's because science communication has so many obstacles to jump over in order to get the information to kids, right? Because it all starts with kids and elementary education. Well, if they weren't portrayed as mad scientists and evil geniuses and evil, you know what I mean? Like the stigma is, and I don't think it's intentional. Please don't get me wrong. It's just a fun archetype to spin a fiction story around, right? Or a cartoon, right?
Right.
I totally
It's a good trope. I mean, it's an overused and lazy trope, but it's a useful one because people can easily identify it.
Mm-hmm. And I don't want to turn this into, like, oh, we're always identified so badly in the media. Well, poor me. Like, I don't give a fuck about it from that perspective. But it does, for a thought experiment, it does make me wonder, how much more accessible would science be if the portrayal was very different? If its understanding, if its connotation in our lexicon was not as negative, if it wasn't stigmatized?
That's a really good question. That is a really good question.
I don't think it's the silver bullet.
No.
But, I mean, that on top of, like, lots of money dedicated to science education.
No, hold on. But do you guys really don't think, because even though I do understand that there may be this failing in science education, but science, I think, is heralded as the miracle of modern science. I think most people understand modern science lets them have the daily lives that they have. If we didn't have modern science, we would still be out there hunting and gathering. You know, it's that
I don't think
important
people
to our
think
lives.
about it, Nate. I think that I don't think that everybody thinks about it. I think that you might take for granted that you think that, and you speak frequently to other people that think that.
I think that, yeah.
But I think that's that's a very selected group of people, because most people don't think about it. When like I visited family where a cousin of mine started trying to talk to me about science. Right, I manage a laboratory. Like, that's my gig for the past 20 years. And this dude like is a construction worker. He starts laying into me about science. Well, science is all about facts. So, and I was just like, stop right there. like your education system has failed you. You currently think that science is all about facts, right? So, I mean, I don't think people care about it. And when people do talk about it, they have such a weird perception of it because it's counterintuitive. Science is by nature counterintuitive. So you kind of need the different techniques to get people interested in it. You know, just like the null hypothesis. If you're going to run an experiment, you need to know what the null hypothesis is. That is the most counterintuitive fucking thing in the world. Well, you're not proving it right. You're either supporting or not supporting the null hypothesis. Like, that doesn't fucking make sense to normal people's ears. You have to get your head wrapped around that before you even step into a fucking laboratory.
Yeah, it is.
Hey.
You know, it's not just simply repeating, because a lot of people think it's just regurgitation, and it's not. It's understanding the concepts, because anyone can regurgitate a few lines here and there. So I'm here to tell you folks, it's not like that.
Hey, we have an audience question from Tyler Durden.
Uh-oh.
Tyler says, "What is the definition of atheism?" Tyler, we're not doing that. Tyler Durden, we're not doing that. No, it's my ongoing blood feud with Steve, and he's just making fun of me. So,
well, now you add heretic in there too, so you just add to the fun.
Heretic. He's done like 3 videos. He's like,
I have to say that was like last week's video, you guys. The one, no, last week was Bert.
Yeah, last week was Bert. I think it was 2 weeks ago. I think
I saw a little bit of that. You guys should be ashamed of yourselves.
Why? I thought the Bert interview went very well. No,
the Bert interview is fantastic. I'm talking about bringing up the whole definition of the whole categorization conversation. I'll call it that. That's the what category are you, and what are the criteria within which are the limits of that category? Fucking that conversation's been going on for like 3 years now, 4 years.
It's a 4-year long drool. It's funny because you know, it's one of those things where no matter, like the other day I was in Steve's hangout and we were reading something on a page, and it literally said, like, you know, we are using the word in this way. And he read it. I said, Steve, read it. What does it say? How do you understand it? And he read it, and he said the opposite, literally the opposite of what it said. And I said, at this point, there is no possible way I can. But there's no way. And then I looked at my wife and I said, there's no way he's going to convince me he's right either. So you know what? It's best not to even talk about this anymore, because we're literally at that point. And sometimes you have to just do that. You know what I'm saying? It's just sometimes, and I have to come sometimes self-reflect and say, am I to the point where I'm so convinced that I'm right that now I can't be convinced that I'm wrong? And if you can't step back and do that, then you can't grow. So that's kind of how I'm at, where I'm at with that whole thing now.
Well, that sounds good. I like that. That's the most rational fucking thing I've heard about that topic.
Oh.
Well, hey, actually, speaking of stepping away, I did want to get on that because you took a little break because you were very active, especially in the we just said it too. Goddamn, with Dr. Jones
Covenant Group.
Covenant Group. You were very active in that, and many.
I was doing like 3 broadcasts a week.
Yeah.
Wow.
I was programming. What was that called? Programming coordinator. I don't know. I had a title. It's fantastic.
You had a few titles, if I'm not mistaken, because you were also a participant too.
Oh yeah, I was a regular.
How many shows did they have?
Oh, all day Sunday for like 12 hours.
Oh,
so there's The Place, there's the Cult of Honesty. It used to be at least on Wednesdays. There's Bob Graves had a show. Greg Brahe I think that's his name, had a show. I had a show.
I'm not even gonna front. Those were like the most atheistic Christians I ever met. I remember when I first watched them, I was like, I don't know what side of the fence these people on. I was like, oh, he's a Christian. I was like, wow, because it was like I just didn't. I've never heard people who of faith talk so rationally, and I hate to say it that way, but it's just true. It's just
That's offensive.
not but just the way like when you hear Dr. Jones goes into it, he goes into like this is what the Hebrew says. Like he really like he takes it from a real academic type of perspective, which I appreciate because I actually learn a lot more. So I don't know. Do you feel that way about the New Covenant group, or how do you feel about the group?
I honestly haven't been. Let's see. I took a break. So this is leading up to a question that you were asking, Drag, about me taking a break and how I was super involved in the New Covenant group. Just put a pin in that so while I answer this question. I haven't seen any New Covenant group content in years. So I honestly don't know what's going on over there. Let's see. I guess this can kind of lead into Drag's question. There came a point, and I don't know whether this is them or me or the environment or all three. There was a time when I felt like I was the token atheist. You know what I mean? Yeah. And after a while, it felt like I was dancing for them in a weird way. And it kind of came to a head when I had a debate with Nephilim Free. And they wanted to simulcast it, and it just things. I think I don't know if I behaved very, very appropriately, but it chapped my ass a little bit the way the situation played out. And so after that, I was just like, you know what, I'm gonna keep doing Meeting of the Minds, but I'm not gonna do it on New Covenant group. So that was, I wouldn't really say it's a falling out, but I'll tell you that they don't return my text messages. So there's that.
Yeah,
it sounds like a falling out.
You see a lot in a lot of these discussions. Well, people who do kind of want, and I'm not saying that this is specifically what they were doing or their motivations, but over the years, I have noticed that some folks will simply just kind of grab people that they find influential or I guess the most talented around to support their platform. And so, you're pretty much a means to an end. You're not a person. They're not genuinely interested in what's going on. You just are there to perform for them, and that's it. And it's sad. It's really sad because people get manipulated into being put in those positions under the guise of, hey, I'm just spreading knowledge. We're just all having fun, right?
Mm-hmm. Now, I don't necessarily want to paint myself with that brush. I will admit that that's how I felt at the time, but I'm hoping that I'm adult enough to know that, once again, just because I'm perceiving that doesn't necessarily mean that that's how it was going down. That doesn't necessarily mean that is the incentive and motivation that they had. It was a feels like, and I have things that I could point to as evidence, but I'm not going to fucking die on that hill. It felt the way that it did. I reacted the way that I did. If I were perceiving it correctly, I reacted appropriately. If not, I probably came off looking like an asshole. But like I said, I'm trying to be adult enough about it to be like, no, even though I felt like I was being taken advantage of as the token atheist, because I brought in Lenny, there was lots of weird things happening. It's so layered, every fucking life is fucking messy. Everybody, get over it. Religion's not bad. Life is messy. We're all irrational. Fuck. Let me just get all my bumper sticker points in right now.
That's all right. That's all right. Express yourself.
You hear Drag over there. He whispering. You forgot Drag. You said your brother's sleeping, right?
Yeah. If I am really close to this snow wall, and I'm trying to speak in between because I have two settings: regular loud ass Negro and kind of awkwardly, ASMR-ish. So there's no in between.
So did you ever notice that there are some phrases that you just can't say when you're whispering without it coming off as super creepy?
Like what?
Your daughter looks lovely today. Go ahead, say it as a whisper, Drag.
Your daughter looks lovely today.
No one wants to hear that. No one wants to hear that.
It's funny. You hear every piece of Drag's breath is
or something like, I like meat. Say that, Drag.
I like meat.
Ew.
That sounds very weird.
I need a goddamn shower.
Moist.
That's a good one.
Oh my god.
I read somewhere that that is the one word that everybody like has a disgust about. I don't know why. There's some irrational aversion towards people saying the word moist.
That's weird.
I don't know. Like that's strange. I never thought about it.
Hey, Matty, this is something interesting. What about this political environment? Because somebody in the chat, I think, we're talking about Trump wall. But what do you think about this? Our president and the political environment that we're in.
It's unfortunately, it's entertaining as fuck. Unfortunately.
Oh, it's the greatest show on earth. It's the greatest show on earth.
Unfortunately, the consequences are, fucking civilization shattering. So politics is my sports, right? I don't sport ball, but I do politic. I was watching CNN just the other night. Yes, I watched CNN. And my wife was like, yeah, you know as much about like all the players as like football fans know going into like the draft.
So you know the mooch. So if I say who's the mooch, you know who the mooch is, right?
Scaramucci. Anthony Scaramucci. Mooch.
10 days as communications director for Trump.
That motherfucker. But he's also he's a case in point of like, how did he get that gig? And what protocols needed to be overcome for him to get the gig? And if that's the case, what other protocols are being overcome for deals to be like the ignorance and naivete about the structure of politics that this current administration has? I don't even know if they have hired their full cabinet yet. It's baffling, and the stories they triangulate it as true. Like for people with critical thinking skills, you just need to triangulate a piece of information to consider it valid or corroborated in some sense. Every fucking mistake the White House makes, and the reputation they have for being bad at protocol or naive to protocol or all of the above, it's just corroborated by everybody. Journalists, who write books and spend days with them, write it. It's corroborated by another writer. It's corroborated by leaks from the White House. It's just like, okay, there's 3 pieces of information that support this thing from reliable sources, right? Of course, as critical thinkers, you want to get it from reliable sources. It's laughable, but at the same time, it's interesting as fuck. It's a great, as somebody who likes psychology, it's one of the best social experiments of all time.
What do you think drives this? Because it seems like, the Washington Post found that Trump has lied over 6,000 times, and these aren't just like misstatements. These are outright lies, like where he said like the tax bill would not help him, and when they crunched the number, they said he's going to get $1 billion in savings off the tax bill. So these are outright full lies. Like, how do you think?
Matter.
Like why don't you think it matters especially to his voters?
Okay, so let's see what I can do about this. In the same way that and Drag has probably heard me say this before, in science communication, right? People who are into pseudoscience say lots of stupid shit. So let's draw an analogy between the lies being told by the White House and pseudoscience, and the American public, caring whether they're being lied to by the White House, and people who believe in pseudoscience. And how do you change their minds, right? How do you convince them that it's pseudoscience? How do you convince them that they're lies? One approach is called the deficit model. Oh, you just don't understand, right? That's that model. You have a deficit in your understanding of how this works. All I need to do is plug that in with more information. And of course, you're going to receive it from me perfectly, and I will have cured you of this belief in pseudoscience or not thinking that these are actual lies from the White House, right? I don't think that it means anything to fact check a president when what's really happening is tribalism. For people that like him, lying that's not as vile an offense as it is for those of us that don't think you should lie, right? that don't like him and also don't think that you should lie. So it's difficult to talk to people that are, how can I put this? Regardless of the current political system, it's always difficult to seek out sophisticated arguments against your position, right? Because it's so easy to find the extremist version, right? Like, why would you go online to hear the worst version of the position that's not yours? Because then it just makes you feel good. It's this weird disconfirmation bias or confirmation, however you want to look at it, right? Whereas, you know, we should be seeking out people with like the best version of the argument that we don't agree with for us to, you know, fuck around with. Well, that, of course, like right now I'm talking at an abstract level that the current White House probably just thinks is itself navel gazing, right? And I think that that's part of the problem. So, so I think that when you look at it from a tribalistic perspective, it just doesn't matter. Like, fact checking isn't the way to change someone's mind. It's not that they don't know that he's lying, and by telling them that he actually is and proving it, that will miraculously change their mind, and now they think that he's a liar and a bad person. It's not how it works. You know, people's belief system, people liking things, people's preferences are driven by things that they're not even aware of. So, you know, and it's usually a web of information. So cutting one cable from that web doesn't fucking change the structure.
Amen to that.
Ladies and gentlemen, Christopher Maute.
I'm so full of shit. That's another reason why I like going online, because I'm so full of shit.
Man, it speaks the truth, though.
Like, it's so much.
It is exactly, if you have a priority for a narrative, you're going to sacrifice something else. And I've noticed this online, just with certain, you know, interpersonal relationships between, you know, different groups of people, you know, atheists, deists, what have you. The people who value loyalty will sacrifice integrity. Now, I'm not saying that you can't have both, but if you place an emphasis on loyalty between you and other people, you will at some point have to sacrifice integrity, because someone who's loyal knows that you are more interested in trying to maintain that relationship and not keeping them honest.
But I think sometimes too, loyalty is a two-way street that people don't realize. Like even with Trump, Cohen, and what's going on with the Trump administration, they're snitching because it was loyalty one way. You know, they were loyal to him. But sometimes you got to turn that, you know, these guys are going through these trials. They got these legal fees. They're about to go to jail. And Trump is not telling them, you know, I'm going to pardon you. You know, you have to. It's almost forgetting that there's a two-way street. But he has a history of doing this, because Trump, for instance, did this in Atlantic City where he didn't pay those people and all that stuff. So he has a history of taking from people, expecting their loyalty, and giving them nothing in return. But I think now it's eventually catching up to him now.
Oh yeah, so what he's good at is, you know, I called myself a bullshit artist a moment ago. I'm full of shit, right? He's a bullshit artist. But the thing is, I think that he's hit his own enemy, which is himself with a bullhorn, like making statements in public. I think that is his kryptonite, because he's just, it's not that he's going to get in trouble specifically for the things that he said. It's just that everything that he puts out there can be used, right? All of his tweets are going into the Library of Congress. You don't think that Mueller's looking at all of his tweets and knows his history, like in a very intimate way at this point? I mean,
did you? It's funny because now there's a I don't know if you guys have heard. There's a secret. The first time ever that a case totally sealed has gone up to the Supreme Court that they are actually going to rule on, where they assume it's from the Mueller case. And it's from a company that's owned by a foreign government. They call it Company A and from Country A. And right now, the Supreme Court has to rule whether they have to comply with the subpoena or not, because both the district court, which is the trial court, and the appeals court, in unanimous decisions, said that this company had to comply with a subpoena, with a grand jury subpoena, to turn over documents.
But because the company is owned by a country,
a foreign country.
Yeah, because that country is not the United States, they don't think that they should be beholden to American laws of subpoena.
Yes, but unfortunately, you know, the way it generally works is that if you are operating on U.S. soil, then you are, you know, you have to then submit to U.S. subpoenas. So it's interesting because it's gone up to the Supreme Court, but everything's in secret. The parties, the lawyers, and it's so secret that when the appeal was heard in the D.C. Circuit, they, for the first time ever, cleared the entire floor, so you couldn't even see who the attorneys were going in. So if the Supreme Court was to rule, it would be the first time ever the Supreme Court ruled on a case in secret, the first time ever. So, you know, it seems like something eventually is coming very, very big for Trump. I don't know what it is, but right now, only thing I really have is speculation. But for this to happen, to go to the Supreme Court and they're ruling on it in secret, shows you there's national security interest involved, and there's something major that's happening. But we just don't know what it is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I just think that Trump doesn't realize what's at stake. You know what I mean? Because I think he's used to getting away with this.
Well, his freedom is at stake, though. Don't you know? He right now, if from my experience, it seems like Trump is money. There's a money laundering aspect to this. Russian oligarchs. He was getting some money. He was doing Trump Moscow. There's a lot of, you know, especially with this with Russia and their criminal state, they do a lot of money laundering. So I think
it's going to be a lot. I think it's going to, hopefully, it'll unfold to be like a like shit that we can't imagine, right? That's why I'm not speculating. Like, I don't know what he's going to get in trouble for. He's shady as fuck. Some of his shadiness doesn't impact this current investigation. So it's, you know, trying to find those boundaries between, okay, this is just juicy gossip versus, oh, this is fucking juicy information that's going to facilitate this lawsuit and this lawsuit. You know what I mean? So trying to keep level-headed about it is a goal, but it's either going to be that crazy multi-layered version, or it's going to be something literally as simple as, like you said, oh, he's just helping the Russians launder money. You know what I mean? And everything else is just a rabbit hole from that.
Well, right now there's no evidence of collusion, so we're going to see what happens. Hopefully, you know, they won't impeach him until they can find that evidence.
Yeah, I'm curious to see how Nancy Pelosi does.
Democrats have finally taken over.
We couldn't have one Three Black Heathen show without talking about Trump. See, people are right.
Well, that's right. Because Trump is 24/7 action. He shut down the government. He's missed, you know, just so people know where I stand. I personally think Trump is being played by the Russian government. Vladimir Putin knows he has him on. He has the information that'll put Trump in jail, and Trump is dancing to his tune. That's the reason why he's pulling out of Syria, and that's the reason why you have this little thing going on where they're keeping up this American hostage that they just peeled off the street because they want him for the Russian spy we have here that they're prosecuting. So it's an interesting little play.
And I have to admit that you know, I've always been a fan of Rachel Maddow, so I'll just say that up front. Because I like her academic approach. She does deep dives and she does the lecture style, and she has a great first, second, and third act with her stories.
Have you watched Sean Hannity? Sean Hannity has a great show. Do you watch Sean Hannity? Have you ever watched the Sean Hannity show? You gotta watch Sean Hannity.
I have in the past, but I haven't seen it in years.
You gotta watch Sean Hannity. It is fun. He has a football. This guy, but he talks straight nonsense. You got to get past the nonsense. It's straight nonsense. Watch if you like Rachel Maddow, because I love Rachel Maddow. Watch an hour of Sean Hannity. It will make you die laughing.
Yeah, I'm sure it's entertaining, just like Tucker Carlson is. I think Tucker Carlson is smarter than his show portrays him as. But hold on a second before we go down that tangent. So at first, when Rachel was like doing so many segments about the Russia thing, I thought that she was going off the deep end. But now I'm super happy she did all of that, because she is like an expert on everything that's happening now, the connections that are being made now. Because before she was like at the bottom of the egg, I just didn't see how it was coming together. And now she is the person with all the information, because she stuck with that story for so long. So that's fun.
She is it's hard to say you're not colluding with the Russian when your campaign manager, son-in-law, and top advisor all go to a meeting with a Russian spy to talk about sanctions and getting information from the Clinton campaign.
On top of having people repeatedly caught in lies about their to get their security clearance about, you know, being an ambassador for a foreign nation or some shit like that, right? Like Flynn forgot to do it. Jared Kushner forgot to do it. I mean, it's like, hold on. No, the evidence that's coming out, as well as them being caught in omission of information. You know what I mean? It's both commission and omission. It's like, Jesus Christ.
It's a
guys,
lot of smoke, but is it fire? Well, that's what Mueller. Soon when Mueller comes out with his report, he'll tell us if it is fire. Because right now it's a lot of smoke. Hey, Drag, do you have any more questions?
I do kind of want to move along our interview a little bit away from politics and kind of get into more of the meat behind the Maute. And I just want to say that, yes, sir,
The meat behind the Maute. I like
the
that.
meat behind the Maute, because we've made references. We've made reference to some of your, we'll call them your proclivities, and we're not talking about flatulence. We're going to talk about who Maute is, because you mentioned that you are a scientist of sorts. So a lot of people don't know your actual educational background and some of the stuff you do on the side, as far as your musical ventures and some of your culinary ones. So let's kind of get into that.
Okay. What do you want to know? You want me to just riff about those topics?
Yes, sir. I want to. I give you the direction, and you go on a tirade. We're gonna let you do it.
A tirade about my education.
Yes, we're gonna start with
First
education.
school that I went to.
I know it's going to be a tirade, because as soon as we get to food, I'm going to get 50 messages from Fabio. That's why I say there's a tirade coming. I already know.
I already got a fucking asshole or two pineapple pizza. God damn, fuck you, pineapple pizza assholes.
Look, already. It's already happening.
God damn it. All right, I'll try to keep my cool. So I went to a lot of schools. When I was 17, I moved from Lancaster, Pennsylvania to Hollywood, California to make it as a rock star in 1989. And that was the year of like Whitesnake and Guns N' Roses and Poison and hair metal, right? Hair metal was the thing. And I looked the part. I had huge, long hair, big hoop earrings. I looked like a fucking idiot. And I didn't make it. So I came back to Lancaster. And then I went to school formally for music at a place called University of the Arts in Philadelphia. I got my certificate in jazz performance, electric bass. And then I went to Rutgers Camden in Camden, New Jersey. Delicious and delightful Camden, New Jersey, known to be the murder capital of the United States for several years in a row, as I understand it. I could be wrong about that. I don't think I am. And I went to study psychology out of music school because I was taking an elective, and that elective was developmental psychology. And because you have to take an elective in order to get accredited, yada, yada. Otherwise, it's just like a music trade school, like the one I went to in Hollywood, California. So developmental psychology. I even remember my teacher's name because his first name was Fabio. Or no, Fabian. Oh my God, I have Fabio on the brain. It must be his tasticles. So Fabian Ulitsky was my teacher. And in teaching developmental psychology, he of course had to go over like some basics about, general psychology, the history of psychology and science and empirical and blah, blah, blah. And it was like if I believed in God, it was as though the hand of God came down and touched me and said, this is the fucking language to answer the questions that you have, right? Because of course I had questions about life and shit like that there. And little did I know that they were just answerable through the scientific field of psychology. So I left music school and I went to psychology school at Rutgers Camden and got my bachelor's. After that, I went to Hahnemann University to study music therapy to get my master's in creative arts therapy. But unfortunately, it took me 2 years to find out I didn't want to be a music therapist. It wasn't a good fit. And then I got a gig no, I didn't. Yeah, I did. I got a gig teaching at my alma mater, University of the Arts, in their graduate school department. So I taught a course called Music and Special Children and another course called The Psychology of Music Teaching, which was a developmental psych class for future music educators. And I did that while I also had a job managing a lab at a place called the Monell Chemical Senses Center. I manage a laboratory that studies the psychology of the sense of smell. And under the principal investigator of Dr. Pamela Dalton. And I co-author the publications that come out of the lab. And so I'm very fortunate, because of the graciousness of my boss, to be the co-investigator, the co-author, I should say, on several papers. I have about a dozen or so papers under my belt as a co-author. So I know a lot about the sense of smell, if anybody has questions about smell. What else? And then I went to graduate school again because I just can't stay away at SUNY Buffalo. I went through their online program to get a master's in education in a program called Science in the Public, which was very loosely affiliated with a think tank called Center for Inquiry in Buffalo, New York. And what else? And I actually had an opportunity to spend 3 weeks at Center for Inquiry as a visiting scholar. That was awesome. And I have great stories about that, because if anybody knows anything about the Center for Inquiry is a think tank that promotes secular policies and politics. And it is just an atheist think tank started by Paul Kurtz.
Oh, I thought it sounded familiar.
Oh, yeah. I got there right after Paul Kurtz was kicked out by his board, but he was still doing some speaking engagements because it was a 3-week-long education course that they were offering, of which I was teaching how to critically think about the topic of my master's thesis, which was complementary and alternative medicines. So I have great stories about that. He goes on a rant. Anyway, that's a different thing. So where was I? This was a Center for Inquiry affiliated with my master's program at SUNY Buffalo. So I have a master's in education in a program called Science in the Public, which is about informal science education and science communication in general. And that's my education. I'm still a manager at Monell. I've been there for 20 years. And I currently teach psychology at Rutgers Camden, my other alma mater. I have this thing where wherever I am taught at, I want to teach at. So I got a degree from UArts. I began teaching there. I got a degree from Rutgers Camden. I'm currently teaching there. I just got done teaching Intro to Psych last semester. That was an 80-student class. It was awesome.
Wow. I almost went to law school at Rutgers Camden, too. That's interesting.
Oh, right on, right on.
Yeah, well, I went to the admitted student day, and then it was like, my wife was like, well, you're not going to Rutgers Camden. You got to stay closer to home. I was like, shit, babe.
Where you at?
I'm in New York.
Okay.
Yeah, so it wasn't that far. It's a couple hours, and I know a couple of people who go to Camden. So.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I teach. I taught in the Armitage building last semester. So that I know you purposely gave me a lot of information to go with because you can't talk a lot, Drag. At least that's what I'm assuming you're doing.
Yeah.
See, I'm smelling what you're selling, brother. What else? Oh, so cooking. I like to cook. I cook the food I like. I like the food I cook.
What's your best dish? Best dish?
My best dish?
Pineapple pizza.
No, fuck you.
What?
Let's just get this over with. There is no such thing as pineapple pizza. Okay.
I love pineapple pizza, man.
No, you
Fuck
don't.
you guys. Pineapples on pizza. I'm the Hawaiian, baby. Aloha.
Are you paying this motherfucker to speak like this right now, Jack?
He has no idea how many years this has been going on.
Oh my god! So he's dipping his toe into this.
He has
The
no
river Styx.
idea. Yes, he has no idea. I've never told him.
I had such great esteem for you until moments ago.
Oh my god, the Hawaiian pizza killed me. I'm sorry about that.
Hawaiian pizza is not pizza. There's no such thing as Hawaiian pizza. Right? There is a flatbread food product that has the toppings of a Hawaiian flatbread food product. And I'm sure that's delicious as fuck, and I would probably eat it. But that's not pizza because there are only 3 pizzas. There's Sicilian, there's Neapolitan red, there's Neapolitan white. I will, when I'm in a good mood, make an exception for deep dish as a 4th category. There are only appropriate toppings. For Neapolitan red, it's red sauce with mozzarella. And then toppings beyond that have to be appropriate. Sausage, pepperoni,
Anchovies.
vegetables. What's that?
Anchovies.
Anchovies. Anchovies are fantastic. Capers, basil, fantastic. And on a white pizza, it's a ricotta with mozzarella and maybe Parmesan. So anything that's not that isn't pizza. So, I mean, once again, I have a good friend, Lenny, who is a potato. And he really likes barbecue chicken pizza. And I keep telling him that that's not pizza. It is a pizza-like food product in the same way that Velveeta is a cheese-like food product. It says right on the brick of Velveeta that you pick up in the non-refrigerated section of the fucking store. Food product. It's not cheese. That's what Domino's Pizza is. That's what anything that is not the things that I just listed are. So he likes that. And I keep telling him, I'll eat the fuck out of some barbecue chicken flatbread. Just don't call it a pizza. Just do me a favor. Do me a favor, don't do that. Also, another reason why Drag loves this, I think, is because well before the political scandal of Pizzagate, me and Lenny had a debate online, and it was a mock debate about this pizza discussion that we're talking about right now, right? And we hashtagged it as Pizzagate.
Oh my God.
This was like 2 years before the Clinton email jam. So what's funny is I'm sure that if you went to go read all of the hashtag Pizzagate comments from Google Plus, it would be very political up to a point, and then it would literally be about pizza.
Oh man. Well, about Maute, I know you have to go, but before we end this, tell people where they can find you, and tell people just a little bit about yourself so they can get to know you a little bit before we go.
All right. Well, let me preface this by saying thank you guys so much for inviting me to shoot the shit. This is exactly the thing that I enjoy about the internet. Having conversations with people, making each other laugh, right? This is the antidote to the blues right here, is being able to have awesome conversations with awesome people. So thank you very much. I did reach out to Drag last week about the fact that, I don't teach this semester, so my time's a little bit more available. I would love to kind of do a few more hangs because my time was so limited over the last semester. So hopefully I will be starting up my Goodenall Talks. So if you are interested in watching a bunch of guys make fun of each other as a way of showing affection for each other about topical things, movies, music, like what did you do this past week that was super interesting? What did you watch? What did you listen to? And then we all just have conversations about it organically. If you're into that, and I usually do it while I'm cooking on Sundays, please go to the Goodenall Talks, GOODENALL Talks.
Listen, you ain't got to spell it out. Link is in the chat. Link is in for the Goodenall Talks. It is not in the chat. It's in the description. So just click that link and you'll take you directly there.
Yes. And then aside from Goodenall Talks, I will hopefully be doing just more content, recording more 6-string bass songs. I'm working on a lot of Stevie Wonder material right now. Or the cooking. I would love to do more Just a Tastes. That's the kind of the title that me and Fabio gave our thing, and do it also with Fabio, with other people. Drag. I would love to re-challenge you to a spicy something eating contest. Like all these things that make us laugh and bust each other's chops and act like idiots. That's what I want to do for this coming year. So look at my Maute Man channel for those videos. And that's pretty much it. I don't have any social media, so I don't really. I have a Twitter account, but I don't ever check it. I'm not on Facebook, and Google's going away. So,
G plus. Oh, it was good while it lasted.
It was super fun.
What you were saying, Drag?
No, I said that. Hey, I am game for whatever this year, folks. It's a new year, new me. Not really, but I like saying that because other people say it.
Well, hey, listen.
Real quick, I've also been getting into like resistance training. And I've turned into the nerd that I made fun of years ago, like last year. So I'll probably be doing more hangs, and I'm hoping to get Drag in on this. More hangs about, the kind of my experience in getting into the resistance training world.
Yeah, and I definitely want to kind of expand that and kind of get into the, here we go, psychology of working out and getting in shape. Yes. And even get into a little bit of the, hey, depression happens. I'm depressed most of the time, but guess what? Don't let that stop you.
No, in fact, I find that resistance training helps with depression. External structure facilitates internal structure.
Well, listen, we're going to leave you with those words of wisdom tonight. It is about 10:36, and again, I want to thank our guest, Christopher Maute, for coming on. The music that you hear at the beginning of the show, and you see his name in the credits, this is a guy who does it. It is amazing work, and we are so thankful that you were able to do that for us. And for all of you guys who don't know, next week we'll be back on next week Sunday about 9 o'clock. I forget the title of the show that we're going to be doing next week, but hopefully it'll be something fun. Also want to thank last week Bert Poole, awesome guest. Thanks again, Bert, for coming on last week. Thanks
I love Bert Poole.
Thanks again for Christopher Maute. Now, if you want to get in contact, you want to see any of his stuff, the links are in the description. Links to his main channel and links to the other channel are in the description. All you got to do is click, and it will take you right there. I think you guys can also just give him a little subscribe because, hey, it makes it happen. He has some good stuff. And since he's going to be more active, because I definitely know how the semester thing goes, because last semester I was like swamped too. So usually if you get that semester off, you really get a lot of free time and you can really do a lot of good stuff. So keep up with Maute. Listen, for Dragnot, for Imp, and for Chris Maute, my name is Nate Brody, and we're going to see you next week on Three Black Heathen Show. Peace.
Later.
That's the sound of the police.